Are you aspiring to ace the UPSC CSE? Commence your transformational journey with the Vision IAS Delhi GS Foundation Course 2025. Empower your exam preparation through cutting-edge educational technology and personalized learning experiences with tech-enabled learning. Dive into concepts with animations, videos, and interactive tools designed for maximum understanding and retention. Personalized student portal. Access live classes, recorded sessions, and extensive academic resources, all at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Enroll now and step closer to accomplishing your IS dream. With the Vision IS Delhi GS Foundation Course 2025, batches starting from 31st August, 5 p.m., 17th September, 9 a.m., 24th September, 1 p.m., 30th September, 5 p.m.
Good afternoon. Old faces, previous batches also. You have done economics. Going on. No background. How many you have a background, like done something here in the institute? No background, nothing about economics? Remaining? First time you were in the class. Okay, so we have, this is the master series. We'll be discussing 3 current affair topics. So I'll try to go as basic so that those who don't have an understanding or those who don't understand terms, they can also make sense of the topic. So the session, we'll keep it an engaging session. Whatever you know, you try to discuss. And we'll start with the first topic, that is the center and state relations. There are 3 topics we'll discuss: the semiconductor mission, center-state relations, and there's one more. Middle income trap, World Bank. So we'll start with the first, the center-state relations. The center-state, specifically the fiscal relations, something called as fiscal federalism. Now you have a basic idea about the center-state relations, that India has a federal structure with more emphasis or more powers given to the central government. Why have been more powers being given to the central government? Why has the central government been given more powers? And what do you understand by this federal structure? Division of powers, better decision making. Do you think center makes better decisions as opposed to state? Center came first. Do you think center came first and states came after the formation of center? So federal structure is both of them derive their powers from the constitution. Center does not give any powers to the state. Both the center and the state get their power from the constitution. Why do we have a constitutionally mandated more powers given to the center? In India, we have a quasi-federal structure, right? We have more power given to the center, not just in the economics realm, the finance realm, but also in polity. Why? To prevent regional conflicts. Anything else? So that's just one topic, interstate water dispute. That also, there is a mechanism to deal with it. Article 261, 262 deal with that. Welfare of diverse population. Anything else? So don't you think state will be more able to do the welfare as compared to center? Who's closer to the people, center or state? Then who will be able to perform this welfare or developmental function better? This is why we have the 3 tiers now. We have the center, we have states, and then we have the urban local bodies, and right, they are the closest to people. This is how it should work. Decentralization, devolution of powers to the institutions which are closer to the people. They'll be able to understand what the people need, and they'll be able to understand or perform that developmental or welfare function. Then why did we give more powers to the center? Yes, one of the biggest problems India was facing at 1947 was partition tendencies. There was no, particularly the whole area was not the territory ruled by British. We had a lot of princely states also. So there were a lot of fissiparous tendencies that we had significant amount of states demanding autonomy. So we wanted to give more powers to the center so that we have a complete union of states, so that we don't have the fissiparous tendencies. People don't secede, right? What else could be the reason? What economic conditions? So then what is the rationale behind? अगर अच्छा नहीं है तो center को दे दें.
Their states may demand looking at their own needs.
Anything else? Do we need an homogeneous economy? So uniformity in development center would play an important role, okay? This could be one valid reason. Anything else? Why? Yahi question hai.
Yes, sir. Sir, basically, sir, it will enhance the efficiency of distribution of the resources.
Enhance efficiency of distribution. Anything else? See, one of the reasons was that states did not have a lot of political or administrative development to carry on the task. It was the central or the national leadership who had some experience with the government here at the central level, who had more political experience, administrative experience as opposed to the states. One of the reasons why we continued with the office of governor was to have a link between center and states, because the political or the administrative development was absent in most of the states. If you look at the northeastern states today, the administrative capacity is still very poor in those states, have not been well developed. These are the reasons why center was given more powers as opposed to states at 1947 in the constitution. Now, when we talk about the economic distribution of powers, center was given more powers to collect tax. Now, why was the center given more power to collect the taxes? For example, the personal income tax or the corporation tax goes to the center government. The state governments do not collect the income tax or the corporation tax. Now, why was the center given more taxation powers to collect more revenue? Because the efficiency of collection of tax would be better at the central level. Now, related to the same point we just discussed, states did not have a lot of political and administrative developments. The collection efficiency of the states would be very low. Right now also, if you see, whatever taxation powers have been given to the state, their own taxation, the revenue collection capacity is very less. This is why they're not able to distribute a significant amount of taxes to the urban local bodies or the panchayats. The efficiency of collection is highest at the central level. This is the reason why the constitution also gave more tax collecting powers to the center. But when we talk about the development aspect, the welfare aspect, if you see the distribution of roles given in the constitution, where are the distribution of roles between center and states? Schedule 7. If you see the Schedule 7, center has more roles, for example, communication. For example, external relations, something which has to do with uniformity across the nation. But states have more developmental roles because people of different regions have different developmental needs. So states would be more able to develop according to the needs of the people. So developmental responsibilities as given by Schedule 7 are with the state governments, but the money required to do this development is mostly with the center. So there is a discrepancy which was designed by the constitution itself, given the present development of both the center and the state government. The administrative political development of center was better as compared to the states. This is why, for efficiency of collection of tax, center was given more responsibilities as opposed to the states. So someone is collecting money, but the other level has the responsibility of development. Now this discrepancy, for example, mostly in India, states collect of the total revenue which is collected, the total tax revenue, state get roughly between 38 to 40%. But when they have to spend for development, the responsibility of states goes up to 60 to 62%. Roughly within 38 to 40% is what they collect as tax of the total tax revenue which is collected at the center and the state level. But when we talk about the developmental spending, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, sanitation, number of services, it's the state government which is doing most of the expenditure, not the center government. In fact, the whole distribution of center and state, the distribution of powers, is based on who can do what better. So communication or even defense, that can be done better at the central level. But most of the developmental needs of the people can be done better at the state level. We went one step ahead in '93, gave more responsibilities to panchayats and urban local bodies. It's the same thing, who is better able to deliver on the developmental goals. This is how we distributed the responsibilities. Is this clear? Now, if total tax revenue cumulative by states is 38 to 40% and developmental spending is 60 to 62%, how do we correct this anomaly? Constitution designed something where efficiency of collection was with center, but efficiency of distribution or development was with states. Now this is designed by the constitution itself. Now, how do we solve this? If someone is spending this much, but getting only this much, how do we correct this? Loans. So first you are not giving me the power to collect money, then you are asking me to take a loan. Do you realize what you're talking about? So your parents did not give you money for preparation, instead asked you to take a loan if you want to study. तो लक्ष्मीकांत के लिए फिर बजाज फाइनेंस के पास जाओ. How will you service the loan? You will get the loan, right? How do you give the interest on the loan? Dream 11. Revenue कहाँ से आएगा? यही, this is the major problem. When revenue is this and collection, there's spending responsibility is this. How will you earn the interest even if you have to take a loan? You need to earn first, then only you will be able to pay the interest on the loan. What exactly is this provision? Yes, Article 280, Constitution itself gives this. To solve this anomaly, Article 280 of the Constitution says every 5 years there will be a commission will be established by the central government, by the president, which is your finance commission. Constitutional body to redistribute or to distribute the tax revenue between the center and states. This is a constitutional distribution of funds. Now, what exactly are the responsibilities of the Finance Commission? First, we'll understand what exactly are the dynamics of this fiscal federalism, and then we'll talk about the issues. And within the last 6 to 8 months, there have been several issues with center-state distribution of finances. The mining judgment which the Supreme Court gave is just another interpretation of revenue collection only. Also has an implication on center-state relations, but majorly it has implications on mining-related activities and development of mining in India. So that is a very small implication as compared to the bigger topic, that is your center-state relation. Now, distributing the funds between center and states, we have a constitutional body, that is the Finance Commission. Now, Finance Commission is responsible for first. This is the first source of funds, that is vertical devolution or vertical transfers. The Hindu, I think 10 days or 15 days back carried an article on this. vertical devolution in the text and context page. Now, what do we mean by vertical devolution? Center has collected certain taxes. These taxes which the center has total collected, this is called as the divisible pool. The total tax which the center has collected, we subtract some of the cost, for example, out of this, the taxes for union territories plus cost of collection plus the money given to the national climate fund, the calamity fund. These things are subtracted and we get the net tax which forms part of the divisible pool. So total tax which is the center has collected, remove the tax for union territories, cost of collection and the money given to the calamity fund. All of the three will be removed and we get the net tax which the center has collected. This net tax is divided between the center and the state. This is what is referred to as the vertical devolution, where divisible pool is divided between the center and states. How much of this fund should be given to the states is determined by an independent commission set by the center called the Finance Commission. For example, the 15th Finance Commission said how much of this should be given to the states? Center, according to 15th Finance Commission, had to allocate 41% cumulative to the states. So out of the total divisible pool, total tax collected, remove these, you get the divisible pool, center and state. The state will get 41%. This is the award given by the 15th Finance Commission. The 14th Finance Commission had given 42%. The 13th Finance Commission had given how much? In fact, it was an important break. 13th Finance Commission, the 14th Finance Commission gave a significant higher number as compared to what 13th had given. 13th Finance Commission had given 32%. 32 to 42 to 41. In fact, they wanted to keep it the same, 42 itself, but 1% they deducted for Jammu and Kashmir was converted from state to UT. So 1% as the tax for UT was taken away, 41%. Right now we have the 16th Finance Commission which has been constituted, which will give the award for the years 2025 to 2030. Next year is what they are going to give out their recommendations. So vertical devolution, how much of the center money which the center has collected will go to the states. Why it will go to the states is clear. Because developmental responsibility is more to the states, but due to the collection efficiency, center got more taxes. Is this clear? Now, if the state cumulatively have got 41%, the next responsibility of the Finance Commission is to do the horizontal devolution. That is, after getting the 41%, all the states also have to be given money. What formula according to which the states will be given money is then decided by the Finance Commission. A very important topic. Every year, 1 or 2 questions in prelims and also in mains come from Finance Commission itself. Distribution or mobilization of resources, center and state governments. Now, horizontal devolution. So vertical devolution is how much of the center collected money will go to the states all together. Horizontal devolution means how much each of the states will get. Now, how much of each of the states will get? There are 4 basic principles which decide horizontal devolution. Any idea on what basis do they get this money? The amount of backwardness, okay. So development or backwardness. That means poorer states should get more money, right? Till when? Till they develop. And if they don't develop? See, this is a question mark which has been raised by Siddaramaiah 2 days back, or I think 3 days back. He said that the southern states have been collecting more taxes, but they are getting less as opposed to what they collect. And the poorer states, despite getting more, are not improving. So till when are we going to give them more? You have to change certain things here. So the first principle for taxation, in fact, tax is collected by the government. Why does the government collect tax? What is the reason for any government collecting tax? So why are you paying income tax or corporate tax or even GST? Well, for welfare. So you give your own money and then you get welfare. Anything else? Is it for welfare? Inclusive development. That means redistribution or welfare, what you're talking about. Was tax introduced for redistribution of welfare? In fact, this is the later parts of development of politics where the states used to provide welfare, then redistribution came as a concept. But initially, why was tax collected? To run the government. The biggest thing, how will you have administration? How will you get government? Because government is meant to provide stability in the society. Stability in the society, for running its administration, the government has to get certain money. That money came from tax. Then came the redistribution aspect of government, that we also need to take care of welfare or inequality. This is where tax would also be used for redistribution purpose. So the first principle that determines horizontal devolution is principle of equity. Equity means that poor states should get more. As per their circumstances, those who need it, they are going to get more. The redistribution aspect of any tax. Any other principle which decides this? Apart from population. Why population? Yes, so if you have more population, you need more resource. The principle governing this is the need principle. Those who need more. Why do they need more? Because maybe they have more area, maybe they have more population. Further, to incentivize better fiscal performance by the states, it can also be linked to how the states are performing in terms of both collection of tax and the efficiency of spending. It should not be the case that those who have more population and those who are poor should be getting money. Those who are well-performing states who have better tax collection efficiency or those who have better developmental efficiency should also be incentivized. You have to create incentives for the good performers also, not those who are lagging behind. Finally, it also takes into consideration if any fiscal issue is with the state in terms of certain disability where the state is not able to mobilize any resource. For example, if a state has more forest cover, that forest cover leads to less capacity for both development and collection of tax. So in order to incentivize the states to not cut the forest, so if you have a particular physical issue or a physical disability, that should also be taken into account. These are the 4 broad principles that determine the distribution of funds from the center to the states. Now, every finance commission has used the same 4 principles, but have a different indicators for these principles. For example, for equity, most of the finance commissions have used the indicator of income distance. What do you understand by income distance? This is one factor. I'm telling you about the indicators. These are the broad principles. And these are the indicators which are used by different finance commission. I'll just give you the indicators used by the 15 finance commission. And every indicator is not a normal average. Every indicator, according to its importance, has been given a weight. It's not that all of the indicators have equal weight. Some indicators get more weight because they have more significance. For example, we want to help the poor or the less developed states to catch up to the developed states. So we give, most of the finance commission have given the highest weight to income distance. 40, 45%, 50% they give to income distance. This is what the Karnataka CM complained about. That you are giving more weightage to income distance, you are not giving more weightage to performance. This is why, despite giving so much of revenue to the poorer states, they are not improving. So what is our benefit of more tax collection if we cannot use it for spending in our own states? This is one of the issue right now which has been raised, mostly by the southern states. So income distance, what do you understand by income distance, anyone? So how do you decide which state is more poor? So we arrange all the states in terms of their per capita income. 15th Finance Commission chose the third state as the benchmark. The more the distance from the third state, the more money the state would receive. The third state, as they calculated, was Haryana back then. Which was the first? Punjab, per capita income. Gujarat. Yes, Goa. Goa, Sikkim, so smaller states are more likely to have more per capita income. Goa, Sikkim, third was Haryana, fourth was Kerala. So income distance, the third largest, the distance. And this formula for calculating the income distance came from a particular finance commission. Every finance commission has their own methodology for estimating the income distance based on the data whichever they select. They selected on 19 to 2020. Later updated also because after COVID, they changed certain data here and then gave the funds to different state governments. In terms of need, 15th Finance Commission used area and population. Every finance commission has used different indicators, assigning different weights. So you don't have to learn this, though in this year, UPSC and Prelims asked these indicators which 15th Finance Commission used. 16 might use something different, but largely they are going to follow these four principles. Performance, they used two things. One was tax effort, the efficiency of tax collection, and the second was demographic performance. These are performance related indicators. Why demographic performance? 15th Finance Commission was the first to use such indicator. Anyone? This became a very big issue during the terms of reference of 15th Finance Commission. Or what do you understand by demographic performance? So what happened here was, for estimating the population, the previous Finance Commission, the 13th, 14th, used the census of 1971. This Finance Commission wanted to shift to 2011. Now what happened here was, the southern states complained that if you shift from 1971 census to 2011 census, we are going to get much lesser funds because we have controlled the population in a better manner as compared to the northern states. So this movement from 1971 to 2011, though it should be done because we need to move closer to the population numbers, but this will act as a penalty on the states, those who have controlled their population better. So if they have controlled their total fertility rate, this will act as a penalty on them, that less number of people, less amount of funds. So in order to incentivize better performance on population control, they added an indicator which was referred to as demographic performance. So this is how you have to manage need and equity along with performance. So though we are going to give you more funds because you are poor, but you can also collect more tax, you are going to get better funds. Also, if you're trying to control your population, this is how they changed from 71 to 2011 and introduced an indicator of demographic performance. This was unique to 15th Finance Commission. Again, repeating, these indicators have been different for different states. For example, the 10th Finance Commission used infrastructure, how much infrastructure the state has built, the quality of infrastructure as an indicator for performance. So different indicators have been used over a period of time by different finance commissions. Then finally, fiscal disability. This was introduced for the first time by 13th Finance Commission. The forest cover in a particular state. Those who have more forest cover will get more funds because this acts as a fiscal disability. No, terms of reference, what you should consider. For example, the center government said that you should consider if states should give more funds in defense. You should consider moving from 71 to 2011 for population. Terms of reference is setting up the terms for them to decide what exactly they can do. What questions they should consider while distributing funds. This also became a problem. The southern states complained that terms of reference are alone decided by the center. We should also be included in setting up the terms of reference for various finance commissions. Now, this is what I'm come to. Tied and untied, the concept is different. Is this clear? This also is again part of terms of reference. Because apart from this, horizontal and vertical devolution, there are other functions of Finance Commission also, which the third function, wahan pe this issue of tied and untied funds exists. Is this clear? Vertical and horizontal devolution. Now, whatever horizontal devolution goes to the states, whatever money they get from this Finance Commission, these are untied funds. That means there is no condition imposed. There is no performance-based particular that you do this, then only you get the money. For example, you do agriculture reforms, then only you get the money. You do policing reforms, then you get the money. No. These are completely untied, unconditional funds. This is the prime responsibility of Finance Commission. The third issue here, or the third important role of Finance Commission, any idea what does the Finance Commission do? Apart from vertical and horizontal devolution? Why? Why specifically local bodies? And do they allocate funds to local bodies specifically? Why do they do that? Or kuch? And still they are not given funds. I mean, if you see number of states, they have not even conducted elections. Maharashtra ne election nahi ho raha hai. Haryana has not conducted elections since the last 2-3 years. Number of states. What else does the Finance Commission do? Apart from this, Finance Commission has been given the power to recommend certain grants to the states. Based on any special condition, they can also recommend grants depending on what the situation of the state finances is. This is specifically mentioned as a constitutional role, statutory grants under Article 275. So horizontal, vertical devolution were the major role of the Finance Commission to decide how much the state should get and then decide the formula based on which each individual state will get the money. Apart from that, the Constitution says, the Article 275 says statutory grants which the center can give to the states to help particular states based on number of factors. Now, one grant in aid which has been given right from first Finance Commission to till 15th Finance Commission has been the revenue deficit grants. Now, what do you mean by revenue deficit grants? Any idea what's revenue deficit? Which one? Revenue deficit means more than. What's the difference between revenue and capital heads? Revenue expenditure being more than revenue receipts means the daily expenditure of the government is more than the receipts which they collect, that is in the form of tax and non-tax revenue. It's the non-developmental spending as we call. Mostly spent on revenue expenditure includes these are the two major heads under the revenue expenditure. Revenue receipts include tax plus administrative and commercial revenue. So that means the current expenditure of the government is more than the current receipts of the government. They have a revenue deficit. Now this is the most problematic deficit. Now, daily use ke liye you don't have money. So why does the Finance Commission give this? For example, pre-devolution, any particular state has a revenue deficit, and post-devolution also the revenue deficit persists. The pre-devolution and the post-devolution money, the revenue deficit of the state still persists. That means they do not have a very good revenue collection, or they cannot manage their revenue expenditure. And if any particular state does not have money for this, revenue deficit grants will be given to those particular states. This is a constitutional responsibility given under Article 275. And just like horizontal devolution, revenue deficit grants are untied funds. There's no condition specific based on which that you have to perform these functions, you have to do certain things administratively, then only you'll get this money. Now, apart from this, The Finance Commission is free to recommend for any particular area or function. They can specifically give grants in aid. For example, the 15th Finance Commission gave grants for urban local bodies, gave grants for disaster management, had certain specific sectoral grants, also gave certain reforms related grants, and special grants given to 2-3 backward states. All of these grants is what the Finance Commission can decide. Not every Finance Commission has given this. For example, the 14th Finance Commission did not have sector grants. Sector grants, for example, for improvement of agriculture, for improvement of health, for improvement of education. The West Bengal government recently complained that the sectoral grants to be given to West Bengal have not been given by the union government as of now. This also has become one of the issue, that though the Finance Commission said sectoral grants for health should be given, West Bengal had certain share of 7,000 crore, the center government has not yet paid that money. But what is unique to all of these grants in aid, that these grants in aid might be conditional. So the two primary ways of getting funds from the center to the states is, one is the horizontal devolution based on 4 major principles which can have different indicators and different weights based on their significance, and the grants in aid, revenue deficit grant as part of Article 275, rest of the grants can be devised by every Finance Commission unique to their terms of reference and their understanding of the situation of states and the center. In fact, 15th Finance Commission was in a unique position where the center government gave the term of reference. Who should be responsible for the defense expenditure? Center, right? Now the center government gave a term of reference to the Finance Commission that we are responsible for defense, but the defense, the function, gets benefits to the states also. So the term of reference to them was devise a mechanism so that for defense expenditures the state should also contribute. This became highly controversial, that if this itself breaks, that if states have to contribute to defense, then what exactly is the function of the center government? Because center government were created with primarily 3 functions. Wherever central governments have been created, they have been given 3 major functions. One is, what are the 3 major functions given? Communication throughout the nation, external relations, the foreign policy, and defense. These were the 3 major areas. So if you need contribution here, this is how terms of reference become problematic, which are given unilaterally by the center government to the Finance Commission. But the Finance Commission did not do anything on this, did not recommend anything. So 2 major sources of finance that comes from the center to the state. One is the horizontal devolution, which is untied. This is the first. And the second is the grant money which can come from the recommendations of Finance Commission. And Finance Commission enjoys certain significance from the day, the first Finance Commission till 15th Finance Commission. All governments have accepted whatever award the Finance Commissions have given. Finance Commission, as per the Constitution, is only a recommendatory body. There is no constitutional mandate on the center to accept what they say. But to maintain a harmonious center-state relation, this independent body has been given the significance that every award which they have given, without any improvements, the center has mostly accepted. Constitution does not say you have to accept, it's a recommendatory body. So these are the 2 major sources of finance. One is this horizontal devolution, the other is grant in aid. We'll come to that, just wait for it. वो इसमें नहीं है. Is this clear? Any doubts here? This is constitutionally mandated, and as per the understanding between center and state, this is always accepted.
Completing the syllabus without proper knowledge of current affairs will not take you far in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Regulate and transform your preparation with complete coverage of news of relevance. Get a concrete hold of current affairs for UPSC CSE with Vision IS Monthly Current Affairs Revision Program starting from 20th September at 5 p.m. The program is your guide to get comprehensive news on one platform sourced through relevant resources such as The Hindu, Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB, Yojana and others. Enroll for complete coverage of current affairs including Indian polity and constitution, economy, international relations, and more. Comprehensive assessment of preparation through MCQs and mains-oriented questions. Expert support through personalized mentoring and online doubt resolution.
Now, the other source of funds, this is where the major problem lies. 1947 or 1951, India started with the exercise of planning. And for planning, for creating the plans, we had a body which was your Planning Commission, an extra constitutional body, the Planning Commission. Now, what was the role of the Planning Commission? Very important. In fact, this is the Planning Commission was the reason that the funds improved from 32 to 42, because 2014 Planning Commission was abolished. A significant amount of funds used to come from Planning Commission. To overcome that gap, 32 to 42 is what they increased. Right now, the states are demanding 50%. This is the present state demand of 50%. Now, Planning Commission, or what exactly was planning? Planning for 5 year, long term as in? So the whole goal of planning was that we need to have certain how do we reach the goal? The Planning Commission is going to determine a plan, that means resource allocation. An extra constitutional body, not elected by the people, was playing a very instrumental role, that is resource allocation for a particular development target. This is why every planning commission or every plan had a particular target. The first plan said 2.1%. To achieve that target, different sectors have to be given resources. Now, how did they redistribute this resource? For distribution of this resource, they designed a 5-year plan. Understand this carefully because this has a lot of significance, because a lot of states, including Bihar and Andhra Pradesh, were demanding special category status. Special category status had to do with Planning Commission, and after the abolition of Planning Commission, the special category status does not exist. How did they devise it? 5-year plan, money had to be allocated, and for allocation of the plan was to be broken down into annual plans. The 5-year plan was broken down into annual plan, and the ministries used to get the money from these annual plans. Based on this annual plan, the annual budget was to be prepared, and based on that, the ministries used to get the fund for developmental purposes. So that means you can see how the Finance Commission or the Ministry of Finance is being overridden by an extra constitutional body, that is the Planning Commission. Though the demand of grants have to be given to the Ministry of Finance. So over the Ministry of Finance, you had another body that was your Planning Commission. So every 5-year plan was broken down to annual plans. Annual plans used to give money through the annual budget to the ministries. Now, how is this money given to the states? First of all, we had only one 5-year plan. That means that there was only one national plan. Whatever the states were planning, they had to be in coordination with the 5-year plan. The state had to plan according to what the 5-year plan had given. This is why every state plan had to seek an approval from Planning Commission. And this is the reason why it was abolished, because the Prime Minister in 2014 was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and he had to take permission for a number of things from the Planning Commission. A lot of states complained, not just the Prime Minister, but other Chief Ministers also used to complain. How did they get money when they put their plan in accordance with the 5-year plan? The states used to receive something called as central assistance to now when you are accepting our plan, you will also get money for implementation of that. Some money you're going to get from your budget, rest other money you're going to get from the center government through the planning commission, which was called as central assistance to state plans. Now, how did this central assistance to state plans come? In the initial years, till the third 5-year plan, till 1969, most of this money used to be based on certain projects or schemes which were designed as per part of the plan. Whatever projects or schemes the 5-year plan or the annual plan is deciding, based on that, every state government was getting money. That means there was no formula for central assistance to state plans till 1969, after which the state government started complaining. Now, if you see the political development in India also, till 1967, you have the Congress government both in center and states. So whatever the planning commission is doing, they don't have a problem. But after 67, a lot of regional governments are coming to power. Now they are saying whatever money you give to us should not be project based, but should have a particular formula. And this is where a formula was devised after 1969 till 2014. This was called as the Gadkil-Mukherjee formula. What they did was, based on a particular criteria, the Gadkil-Mukherjee formula devised a criteria and divided the states between the special category status was introduced in the year of 1969. The states were divided into two, the special category and the general category states. Now, how will the funds be distributed, or what the broader criteria for giving anyone the special category status was? One was how much amount of tribal population they have, what is the amount of hilly terrain. Hilly terrain makes it difficult for development. Economic and infrastructural backwardness. Border locations, that is strategic location. Not necessarily. These were the broad criteria, 5, which were used. Landlocked hota, Jharkhand and all these states would also be received, but they did not. They never received the special category status. Based on these 5, the special category status was given to the northeastern states, all of them. Northeastern states, Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. With the creation of Uttarakhand in 2000, Uttarakhand was also given the special category status. So the 3 hilly states, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and the northeastern states, these were given the status of special category status. Now, what was the difference between the special category status and general category status? The special category states, whatever money they are going to get from the center as part of this assistance to state plans, 90% of that money is going to come in the form of, and 10% of the money has to be in the form of loan. And for the general category status, 70% will come in the form of, and 30% will come in the form of grant. This was the Gadkil-Mukherjee formula, which operated from 1969 till 2014. In fact, general category also they devised a formula that whatever our general category status, how will you distribute among them? For that also they devised a particular criteria. They said, we'll divide amongst the general category based on in sab pe weights, they had given weights also. And special needs. This was the Gadkil-Mukherjee formula for determining special category and general category states. Is this clear? Special category status. So what I have done here is, the states, I divided 5 factors. Based on that, I found out certain states are special category, right? So in special category, if my particular state is, say, Jammu and Kashmir. So if I have to give 100 rupees to Jammu and Kashmir, 90 rupees will be grant. That means they don't have to return it. Only 10 rupees is what they have to return. But if the same 100 rupee has to be given to, say, Uttar Pradesh, 70 rupees is the loan and 30 rupees is the grant, 70 rupees is what they have to return. So I have divided the states based on a particular criteria. I have devised a formula. In fact, they added one more thing here, and this is how it happened. The amount which the center decided to give to the states, 30% of the funds will go to special category status. Remaining funds will come to general category. 30% was earmarked every year for special category status, and remaining amount will then be distributed amongst the general category status. So the first benefit which the special category status states are getting, that they get money more in the form of grants as opposed to loans. There were other benefits also over a period of time given to special category status, but now since the status does not exist, those benefits are also gone. Is this clear? Apart from that, any doubt here? Apart from that, apart from the formula transfers, this was another form given till 2014. The center was also distributing discretionary grants to the states. Why this is not studied anymore? Because it has been stopped after 2014. This was called as the normal assistance given by the center. This has stopped after 2014. This fund does not exist anymore. This is why the demand of Bihar and Andhra Pradesh does not stand anymore, because we have stopped with this type of an assistance. And you're not distributing the status or this money, the demand for the status does not exist. The demand has been accommodated here in discretionary grants. Now, how do the discretionary grants, again, this was distributed earlier by Planning Commission. Right now, they are distributed by Ministry of Finance. Since the Niti Aayog does not have any money distribution function, this function of discretionary grants has been shifted from Planning Commission to Ministry of Finance. This is also given under the Constitution, under Article 282, which says miscellaneous transfers from the center to the state governments for developmental purposes. 275 is called as statutory grants, which is given by Finance Commission. 282 is the discretionary grants, which is given by the earlier Planning Commission, but now the Ministry of Finance. How is this distribution discretionary grants given? One is and the other is central sector schemes and the centrally sponsored scheme. So the first source of finance was horizontal devolution. The second source of finance was grants in aid. The third source of finance coming from the center to the state is central sector scheme, and the fourth source of finance is centrally sponsored scheme. These are the 4 ways in which the center gives money to the states. the normal assistance to states through this formula has been discontinued after 2014. This was also an important source of fund, but this has stopped after 2014. In fact, this fund stopped. This is why Finance Commission improved the transfer from 32 to 42. Because this fund was also a major source of finance for the state governments. This stopped, so 14 Finance Commission said 32 to 42. Now what is the central sector and centrally sponsored scheme? This scheme is totally designed and financed by center. Implementation happens in the states. In fact, this became very controversial in this year budget. Anyone has an idea why? This was the major controversy in the 2024 budget. After the election, the budget which was given. What was problem or controversial in this year budget? The other states were complaining. Most of the projects given to Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, it was central sector. You can't give the status now. So what they have given is central sector schemes, most of them being implemented by two governments, financed completely by center. It was central sector. Centrally sponsored schemes are financed by both center and state. For states which have hilly regions plus tribal population, again the special category ones, tribal population, they have to share 90:10. So again, all of those states, but they don't call it as a special category status. They say states having a hilly terrain, the northeastern states will have to pay 10%, 90% will be paid by center. But again, this is given scheme per scheme. Every scheme, centrally sponsored scheme, will carry this 90:10 ratio. If it is not mentioned, then it is everyone has to pay the same. The other is for general states where center gives and the state gives 40. In fact, this also has been reduced in the recent years. It has been made 50-50. So there are 4 sources of financing given by the center to the states. The reason being efficiency collection, tax collection better at center level, developmental welfare spending better at state level. Is this clear? Now, what are the issues that have happened in this? So, we have 4 major transfers. Article 280, the Finance Commission transfer. And you have Ministry of Finance these are the 2 major, this is the 3rd and the 4th. These are the 4 ways of how center gives money to the states. Is it clear why it gives money and how it gives money? What is special category status? Defined by the Gadkil-Mukherjee formula, does not stand because the Planning Commission has been abolished after 2014. And whatever assistance the Planning Commission used to give through that formula has also stopped. Most of the money now comes through central sector and centrally sponsored. Now, what are the issues which have happened in the past 6 to 8 months on this? Any idea what are the issues? In fact, Kerala government has a lawsuit against the center. Kerala government came on protest here in Jantar Mantar along with Telangana, Karnataka, other state governments also. What are they complaining against? West Bengal has a perennial problem with the center government. Kerala also recently, with respect to the implementation of Samagra Shiksha, PM Shri, also had a problem with respect to the transfers. But then Kerala government agreed to sign an MOU. What exactly is the issue? Number of states have a problem. Before that, let's talk about these four. Borrowing per limit also will come to. How? We'll start with this first. Yes, this is true, they are tight funds. First is the vertical devolution problem. Vertical devolution said that the money will be given from the divisible pool. Now, the biggest problem that lies in the divisible pool is that this divisible pool only takes in whatever the tax is being collected by the center. Over and above the tax, the center also collects cess and surcharge. This money, as per constitution, this is given in the constitution itself, the cess and the surcharge, which is nothing but a tax on tax, this does not go into the divisible pool. Now, what is the problem with this? Now, if this money does not go into the divisible pool, what the center government has been doing in the last 5 to 10 years is, they are not increasing the amount of tax, instead they are increasing the amount of cess and surcharge. So they are collecting more revenue from cess and surcharge as composed to the major tax. Therefore, the divisible pool is not increasing every year as it should. For example, in 2011, cess and surcharge collected by the center government as a percentage of total tax collected was around 10 to 11%. In 2020-21, this increased to 20%. Last year, 2023-24, this has been reduced to 14%. Now, how does the government do this? In 2018-19, as per the announcement in the budget, the government reduced the tax on petrol, which is the excise duty, by 9 rupees. This is what they made an announcement in 2018-19. Excise duty was reduced by 9 rupees, but at the same time, the road cess which the center government was collecting increased by the same amount. Now, whatever revenue they had to collect here, the divisible pool has reduced, but the revenue collected by the center did not change, because this 9 rupee does not go into the divisible pool. So the present problem, the vertical imbalance that exists between the center and state, the problem is that the divisible pool is not improving because the center is collecting most of the taxes through cess and surcharge and not through the major taxes it has. 2 years back, 2020-21 also, it reduced the excise duty but did not change the cess. So the divisible pool reduced, but the tax collected by the center did not change. So by collecting more revenue through cess and surcharge, the divisible pool is not increasing. This is the first problem which the states have with the central government. You see, everything will come together in a picture. Why they are doing it? Because if you see from both center and state level, the politics in India has become more populist in the last 10 to 15 years. If you are going to give direct transfers to the people, you need to have revenue sources for that also. If your revenue sources are constrained, you will not be able to implement schemes which you are promising. Now, this promise also became a problem when the Election Commission came in between and said, you cannot promise anything because you have to find the finances for it also. But the Election Commission then had to face a backlash that you cannot tell any political party how to or what exactly to mention in their manifesto. All of this is connected to how the money will be distributed to the people, whether it comes from center or state. The center in the last 10 to 15 years has been squeezing the space for the state governments. This is why the mining judgment comes a very big relief for the state governments, because certain powers have changed there. This is the first problem. The second problem, as we discussed in horizontal, the issue with horizontal transfers is that most of it is giving relevance to equity and need, not given to performance. The Karnataka government is trying to rally the other southern states to complain about this. Now, what is the problem here? The problem here is not that the states which are backward should not get money. The problem is who is holding them accountable for the performance on the money. So basis on equity and need, the backward states are going to get more money. But what exactly are they going to do with that money? Are they developing or not? This is a major issue. So the southern states are complaining that we are performing better, but we get less money. We don't have a problem in giving them more money, but they are not using the money for developmental purposes. What ideally happens in growth is that those states which are more backward, the growth percentage should be more high. Convergence that happens from a low level to a mid level, that happens at a very high pace. It's difficult to improve from a mid level to a high income level, but low to mid happens at a very high pace. That is not happening with the poorer states, despite giving them more money through the equity and the need principle. Income distance, most of the Finance Commission has given highest weightage to income distance. Poorer states getting more money. This is within the states which they have complained with. Now, what is the problem with this centrally sponsored? Another issue. Central sector problem is the schemes are turning political. There is no developmental rationale behind giving more money to certain states. It's mostly a political rationale because you want to stay in power. So where the central sector scheme will be implemented, since they're given total money by the center, that has become political. This year budget itself is an example. Now, what is the problem with centrally sponsored scheme? This is where West Bengal, Kerala both had a problem, and West Bengal, in the last 2 years, the money has been delayed, especially for Manrega. Manrega money has been delayed. Then their NFSA grains have also been delayed, the money given for that, because of in the receipt, they did not put in the logo or the photo of the Prime Minister. Photo of the Prime Minister, Kerala government also refused to put. This is how it is connected to centrally sponsored. Now, why centrally sponsored? This has always been a problem between center and state. Centrally sponsored schemes are mostly schemes which are done on the state subject. First, you are encroaching on the domain of the state subject. The center government still does it because it has a rationale that we have to provide certain amount of uniformity in development. That state government do not have a very good revenue mobilization capacity. So certain areas, we are going to help you in providing that finance. But the problem with this is completely designed by the center and has all the logos and the name of the scheme, which is indicating the role of the central government. So if you see most of the schemes which are centrally sponsored, they carry the Prime Minister logo. This gives political benefits to the center government and not to the states. States are not included in the design of the scheme, even though you are encroaching upon their subjects. And finally, when this scheme is given, it is a revenue sharing between center and state. The finance has to be shared between center and state. This, which was earlier 60:40, now has been transformed into. Plus, whenever the center has to give the share to the states, there have to be certain conditions that have to be fulfilled. If these conditions are not fulfilled, the center share is not given to the states. This is where the major issues lie. For example, the problem was with the National Rural Health Mission. The National Health Mission, the Ayushman Bharat, the complete program is a centrally sponsored scheme. Under this, all of the PHCs had to be called the Arogya Mandirs. इनका पेंट भी एक कलर का करना था, वेस्ट बंगाल ने मना कर दिया. If West Bengal said no, the condition is not fulfilled, the money will not come. Another problem that happened in the state center share of the money was not given. Why? Why was it not given for Manrega? It was also not given. All of these happened with West Bengal. And finally with Kerala also it happened. It happened on Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, a scheme introduced for implementation of the new education policy called PM Shri, West Bengal signed an MOU. So the state governments had to sign an MOU agreeing to the conditions. Then they'll be getting the money under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. West Bengal signed the MOU, did not get the money. Kerala refused to sign the MOU because they have a political problem with this policy. The party in power ideologically did not agree with the new education policy, so they refused to sign the MOU here. But since there is a significant fund coming from the center, then they agreed that for the money, we are going to sign the MOU. So the whole point which lies in all of these 4 examples is the money that comes in the form of centrally sponsored scheme comes in the form of tied funds. There are certain conditions that have to be fulfilled. After the conditions are fulfilled, then only the money comes. And these conditions are not just 5 or 10 conditions that have to be done. For example, under National Health Mission, there are a total of 5,500 conditions which the state has to fulfill. Then only the money will be disbursed from the center. So you can see how through political means, you can control the conditions and then control the amount of finance that comes from the center to the states. This became a very big problem because centrally sponsored scheme increased in number over the years. 1970 onwards, when they were introduced, the planning commission was to distribute more funds from the normal assistance, less funds from centrally sponsored. But over the years, these number of schemes started increasing multiple times. Why they have a problem? The states have a problem because, again, encroaching upon their space, having the complete central government insignia, and also giving them a share of finance. The center share only comes after the conditions being fulfilled. So you can see the amount of space which the state government has despite giving significant amount of funds in these schemes. This is why in 2015, Niti Aayog had a subcommittee to rationalize the amount of centrally sponsored scheme. It was reduced from 92 to some 66 schemes, after which it has been reduced only to 28. So there is the proliferation of centrally sponsored scheme has now stopped. Schemes are not increasing, but the conditions definitely pose a problem for the state governments. What they did in 2015 was these 28 schemes were divided into 3 categories. And optional schemes. But the features of all 3 remain the same. So the present last 6 months issue, whether it was West Bengal protesting against the central government in Delhi in Jantar Mantar, was about these conditions, and they were not getting the finances from the center. They were not ready to print the photo, they were not ready to convert it. This is why the center said we are not going to give the money. So the problem lies is the fund is not conditional. So now the terms of reference which the state governments want to give to the finance commission is that more funds should come from the untied, unconditional funds, less from the conditional funds, because it's very difficult to comply with all of the conditions with the center sets. Is it clear? These are the issues which have been evolving throughout on center state. Another issue which has come up, this is why the Kerala government filed a suit in April with the Supreme Court. Now what exactly is that issue? Under Article 293 clause 3. What Article 293 says, if any particular state government has taken a loan from the center for any other borrowing which they have to do, they will have to take a permission from the center. That means the center will impose a limit on their borrowing. This was not a very big issue since 47. This became a very significant issue when there was restrictions on how much the center could take a loan. That came through the regulations of FRBM 2003. Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act introduced a fiscal deficit limit on the center of 3%. It also recommended certain such legislations and a limit on how much states could borrow through this law itself. The center could also now use this to enforce this on the states. This is how the FRBM also coming into the picture. In fact, the 10th Finance Commission said that each of the state governments to get their money have to pass such type of laws within their jurisdiction. The Finance Commission also forced them to pass these fiscal responsibility legislations. Right now what the problem has, is this clear? Article 293 imposes a limit on the state, how much they can borrow. Now, what was the Kerala suit to the against the center government? What is the basis of this limit? They say these limits set by the center government, the Kerala government says, these limits set by the central government are highly arbitrary in nature. In fact, Kerala government faced another issue. This is why they went with the Supreme Court. This is the basis of the law. On what basis do you set the limit? This is mostly arbitrary without any particular logic. In fact, what had happened here was, whenever the states are borrowing, if the limit is say 2%, the 2% of the state GDP is the limit which has been set on the state government. The center changed the law on this limit last year. What they did was that if the state not borrowing directly, but borrows through another agency such as a state PSU, this is called as an extra budgetary borrowing. For example, the state had to pay say 2 lakh crore rupees to a particular PSU. It did not give them this money, instead asked them to take a loan of this from the market. So effectively I reduced my borrowing. I had to give them money. I did not give them the money, instead I asked them to borrow from the market. In this way, the total borrowing limit which I had taken breached the limit. I am not borrowing directly. When does a state government borrow, or when does a particular entity borrow from the market? When its expenditure is more than the receipt is collected, right? Now, what does the state do here was, it controlled its expenditure. The state government had to pay certain money to its PSU. It did not pay this money and therefore reduce its expenditure and therefore reduced its borrowing. But the PSU needed this money. So what they did was, this PSU borrowed. So I did not borrow directly from the market. I asked one of my other entities to borrow from the market, but eventually this borrowing will be paid by the state only. Why? Because the PSU is owned by the state. What the union government said last year was, irrespective of who borrows, they will have to comply with the limit. So the limit does not apply on this borrowing, the limit will apply on total borrowing. Your own borrowing plus the extra budgetary borrowing which you have done, both of them will have to comply with the limit. This is where the Kerala government faced significant issues, because they were using a particular PSU, the Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund. They were using this organization to breach the limit. Now, since last year, the limit has to apply on borrowing of both state and whatever PSUs have borrowed in a particular year. This limit means how much they can borrow has been constrained significantly. And this is why now they are asking the basis for the limits which they can put. This has become a constitutional question, whether the center can impose a limit, and if they can impose a limit, what are the grounds for imposing the limit. This is another issue. The case is still pending. Is this clear? So the states have a problem with cess and surcharge with vertical devolution, have a problem with how other states are using money in horizontal devolution, have a major problem with centrally sponsored schemes, and a problem with the borrowing limit. Finally, they have another issue, though this has number of other issues in the design itself, but center ke saath there's only one, that is the GST. Now, what is the problem with GST? Recently, there was a video also which went viral. What is the problem with GST? Especially in the center-state relation. Any idea? In fact, no one has seen that video. The business one was apologizing to the finance minister. Bun pe 9%, cream pe 9%, cream bun pe 18%. No one has seen that. It became very famous. In fact, Hindu, Indian Express, everyone covered it. Anyways, What's the problem of GST? Like, why center and states have an issue with the goods and services tax? What that businessman had raised an issue was with respect to the rates of GST on different products. What is this problem? What kept on increasing? Anything else? So what happened here was, the taxation powers with respect to indirect taxes of both center and states have been given to GST Council. Now individual states do not have the taxation powers. Now if individual states do not have the taxation powers, so they cannot implement any schemes because the taxation powers have been now cumulatively given to the GST Council. Now why did they give all of this power to the GST Council was, first one, there are efficiencies in GST system, but another promise which the center made to the state government was that every year from 2017 to 2022, your tax revenue will increase by 14%. One of the reasons why the states came on board for GST was they were promised a higher tax revenue, 14% growth of tax on the base of 2016. So whatever you collected in 2016, 17 may you'll collect 14% if you come under the GST system. In case this 14% growth of tax does not happen, the center is going to pay a GST compensation. This was the promise that was given in 2017 when the GST was introduced, that on a base of 2016, you're going to get 14% of the growth of the revenue. This was GST compensation, and for GST compensation, the center is also going to collect something called as, for 5 years, the GST compensation cess will be collected. Now what happened in 2020 till 2022? Now this is between the 5 years where the growth was promised. Pandemic induced lockdown, the 14% did not turn up. I have to pay a compensation if the growth does not happen, and the compensation will be paid from a cess. This cess was to be levied on certain luxury items. So the GST Council decided certain items there will be a cess. This cess will be only be used for a particular purpose, that is to pay the compensation. Now for these 2 years, what happened? During the pandemic years, the growth in the tax revenue did not turn up. Therefore, there was a high demand for compensation. But the cess would not be high. Since the growth stopped, there is no lockdown. So if there is lockdown, the slowdown of consumption means the cess is not collected. So the demand for compensation is high, but the cess is not being collected. Now if there is a mismatch here, what the center government did was, center government borrowed from the market in order to pay for the compensation. They borrowed for these 2 years from the market and paid the compensation to the states. Is it making sense? You were promised 14% growth for 5 years. Due to pandemic, the 14% did not happen. Every state started demanding compensation. But during these 2 years, I did not have the cess to pay for it. So what the center eventually did was, they borrowed from the market. But now what they have done is, now 2022 is done. They have continued the compensation cess for another 5 years from 22 to 27, but are not paying the GST compensation. So the compensation is not being paid after 22, though the cess is being collected. So now the states are not getting any revenue benefits and there's no compensation which the center will pay, but the cess is still being collected by the center. Now why is the center collecting the cess? Because the center says we have to pay the loan which we have borrowed. So the compensation cess which was introduced to pay for the compensation still continues, but the compensation is not being paid to the states. So those states which are losing revenue are not being paid any compensation after 2022. And now they do not have any powers to levy their own taxes because the cumulative power is with the GST Council. The powers have been divided in such a manner that all the states cumulatively have power. Individual states do not have power in the GST system. So if a particular state wants to implement its own scheme, for example, Tamil Nadu wants to come up with a breakfast scheme in combination with a midday meal scheme, they will not be able to garner more revenue because they cannot levy tax as part of GST. Also, if their revenue does not increase, they will not be paid any compensation. Earlier, they did not have a problem if they could not levy a tax because they were getting 14% guaranteed or a compensation. So if this does not improve, they can't improve their own tax, and the compensation also does not exist. This is another issue between the center and states with respect to distribution of resource. Is it clear? That means the direct money that is coming from the center to the states is constrained because of the vertical and horizontal devolution along with centrally sponsored scheme. There the revenue space is reducing. Indirect, the states cannot do anything because they are part of GST. So the revenue space for the states is decreasing considerably. This is why there are significant political issues arising out of it. Because if the state governments want to promise something, they will not be able to find the revenue for it. Is it clear? Yes. This cess will be paid by whom? By the people who are buying these luxury goods. Indirect tax क्या होता है? Indirect tax, for example, now manufacturing and supply, both manufacturing and sale, is being levied as part of GST. So the consumer at the end of the day will pay this cess. But we are saying this cess will be used for compensation only. So for example, on a particular luxurious item, the product is of say 100 rupees and the item has a GST of 28%. I am also levying a 2% cess on this. So this cess is paid by whom? The one who bought this item. But this 2% will only be used for paying the compensation. What is happening today is this 2% is still collected, but the compensation is not being paid. So indirect taxes, the state face a problem. Direct distribution, the states have a problem with centrally sponsored, and vertical devolution, the pool not increasing. So the revenue for the states is significantly less. Is this clear? The various ways in which center gives money to the states and what are the issues in it. Now, what was the mining judgment and how it became highly controversial? The mining judgment, the Mineral Association against the Steel Authority of India Limited, what the case was, and this was a 9-bench judgment. The center government has asked for a review of a 9-bench judgment. This is quite significant. And the judgment also came 8:1. It was not that it was a contested judgment, 8:1, significant majority say this judgment came. Now what happened here? Cess extend किया है, compensation नहीं. Issue यही है. Cess extend हुआ है, compensation extend नहीं हुआ है. And cess always, what's the defining feature of a cess? Cess has a particular, the expenditure where it has to be done. Cess is always specific to a particular purpose. But if you're not serving the purpose, you're still collecting the cess. Major problem is, see what is the problem with the cess or what is the problem with compensation? Compensation was given if I do not get a revenue growth. So if the revenue growth does not happen, I cannot levy my own tax and I also don't get the compensation. But you in the name of compensation are still collecting the. So the space for the state to levy its own taxes has been constrained. The benefit which was given in form of compensation has also been removed. So they're not seeing an increase, a significant increase in their revenue, and they were also not being paid the compensation. So if I have any new expenditures, how do I finance my expenditures? Direct taxes are already given to the center. This is what we talked about, Finance Commission. Indirect tax, GST Council. So where is the revenue mobilization space for the state governments? Heavily constrained. This is why they've asked for a logic for the borrowing limit. They've asked for horizontal devolution change, vertical devolution change, because the space is reducing. It depends on every state. Based on their state GDP, the center government, the 3.5%, the center government took the target from FRBM. Center decides based on the state, gives based on their own GDP how much percentage the center decides. Every year they define this limit. Now what happened with the mining judgment? What do you understand by this concept of royalty? Natural resource पे tax for what? See, this is what the difference, what they have defined in this judgment. Is it royalty is a tax? How? अब पहले तो tax का, what is the meaning of tax? This is what they have clarified in this judgment. In fact, the whole essence of this judgment is the difference between royalty and tax. And who can then tax? If royalty is not a tax, then who has the power of taxation over the mining and minerals? Rights, mining use. What is the definition of a tax? Nobody knows the definition of a tax? What is a tax? Why is it called a duty? Custom duty. What is a tax? Revenue collected. Is the only revenue source tax? If the government collects a fees or a fine, that is not revenue. So revenue is the larger. वो purpose है. Feature क्या है tax का? Obligation. Tax is a unilateral payment. What do you mean by unilateral payment? Yes, that the government will collect the tax from the people and will not give them any particular good done service. A particular bilateral payment means you pay something, you get something in return. There is no specific good or service which the government will return when you pay tax. So you can't say I paid a tax of 2 lakh rupees, I did not receive a tax, you did not receive a value of 2 lakh rupees from the government. This was never the definition of tax. Tax was always a unilateral payment which is an legal obligation you have to pay. You can't say no. Tax, just like citizenship, there is no particular say. You don't have a consent. You have to pay tax, and it is for the general welfare of the society. It is not for a specific benefit of the one who has paid the tax. If you paid 20 lakh rupees as tax or even 2 rupees as tax, both of them will enjoy the road given by the government. It's not contingent on how much tax you pay. So tax is for the general benefit of the society. It is not for a specific good and service in return. Royalty, what exactly is royalty? In fact, you know what are different factors of production? Which is the first factor of production? Land. For use of land, what is the return which is earned? Rent. And when we say land, we also talk about the resources in the land, in and on the land, and these resources are mostly in the name of the government. Now, when the government gives this exclusive use over the resource to any private party or even a government-owned PSU, they will earn a royalty. So royalty is mostly a contractual obligation. Someone gave you an exclusive use over the product which was there. This is how even in intellectual property rights, someone is holding a patent, someone is holding a copyright. If you want to use their product, you will have to pay them a royalty. So the exclusive use has now been given to a third party as part of a contractual obligation. In return, they pay a royalty. In fact, this is what rent is also. Someone has given you the use over land, you are paying them the rent. So this is why we say land as a factor of production earns rent and royalty. Is this clear? Now what the Supreme Court judgment has said, that royalty is not a tax. Now what is the implication of this judgment? Royalty in terms of mining and minerals, the state list entry 50 says that mining in a particular state will be regulated by the state government. All regulations will be regulated by the state government, but subject to any law made by the parliament given by the powers under the union list subject 54. So the regulation over mining, though a state subject, but is subject to the regulations given by the center. So Center for ensuring uniform regulations over mining can have a law for regulating it. So whatever powers the state has are subject to the regulations by the center government, but this regulation will come through the parliament through a law. So given this power under the Union List 54, the center government passed a law, Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act 1957. So state has the power, but the power is subject to the regulations of the parliament. Why? Because Union List Subject 54 gives the overriding powers to the central government. The powers have to come from the constitution. The powers have come from the Mines and Mining Development Regulation Act of 1957. Now what this act did was, under section 9 of this act, in order to ensure uniformity, the center government will decide the royalty to be paid. The center government is going to decide the royalty to be paid. Royalty will be paid to the state, but decided by the center. Because the center said different states can change the amount of royalty. So we are going to, with time to time, we are going to have guidelines with respect to how the royalty will be decided. So they have had a number of expert committees to decide how much royalty has to be paid. So center fixes the royalty, but the royalty has to be collected by the state. Private or even a PSU, they will pay the royalty to the state, whatever has decided by the center. This is what the regulations are. This is the present regulations. What some of the state governments started doing was, in 90s, along with the royalty which this party had to pay, they started imposing a cess on the royalty, which was decided by the state government. And what they said was, the State List Subject 50 gives us the power to regulate. And since the center does not have any regulations with respect to tax, they introduced this cess. So over the royalty, they introduced a cess on the royalty. This is something in the form of a tax. Royalty is for the use of the mineral. The cess comes as a tax because the state is imposing it unilaterally without any contractual obligation. In 1999, India Cements versus the state of Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court cancelled this cess and said state governments do not have any power of taxation on mining. That taxation is solely the responsibility of union. This was first challenged in this case in 99, where they said that royalty is not a tax, the cess in fact is a tax. The royalty will be collected by the state, decided by the center, but the state cannot impose any other tax because this is not the responsibility of the state. This judgment has been overturned this time, where the state has been given the power to collect the tax. So now what this judgment gave, the present judgment, says the state can collect the royalty, which will be decided by center. So this was already decided. This is something under both the list and also the MMDR Act 1957. But over and above the royalty, the tax can also be collected by the state, has now been conclusively decided. So now the state governments can decide their own tax on the minerals present with them and impose it on the party which it is using without over and above the royalty considerations. The center was claiming that this taxation power is solely their responsibility. But how the Supreme Court has interpreted these two entries, they have said the taxation powers lies with the state government. Problem does not end here. Problem is that now the state has been given the power to tax. So one way the revenue capacity of the state increases those who have minerals, right? Another subsequent to this, the order after a few days is that they also had to decide whether the tax will be applied with a retrospective application or not. And the Supreme Court clarified after 1st June 2005, or this judgment will apply from 1st June 2005 till date. So the previous tax which the state claims on the parties who were using, they will have to pay the tax to the state governments. And the total industry combines this retrospective tax to be paid to the state governments to the tune of 2 lakh crore rupees. And most of them are PSUs of the center government. Coal India Limited or Steel Authority of India, most of them are center PSUs. This is why the center has asked for a review of this judgment. The possible implication on this would be that if the state has been given the power to collect a tax on mining, this will significantly improve the rates of all the mineral mined in a particular state government. First, there will be differential taxation in different states, and more power will be with those which are mine bearing states. Those which do not have anything, for them to get the mines, to get the minerals here, cost will increase. So the cost of mining, cost of mineral will significantly increase. This is the previous payment which they have to pay. Future mein further cost is going to increase because the state is going to levy its own tax on mining. The center did not want this. But since this is a 8-1 judgment, center is still asking for a review. So the mines and the mineral bearing states definitely have a lot to gain because they have got another source of tax. So this becomes significant because the space for the states was earlier reducing has significantly increased. Plus the Supreme Court has said a lot about federalism also, that certain power of taxation the Constitution wanted to give to the states itself, where mining was one of the subjects. So they have clarified this in this judgment. But this implication is huge on the industry. Now, why in the industry the implication is huge? First, that the cost will increase multiple times because they have to pay an additional tax over and above the royalty. And if the state decides the tax will be based on the value of the mineral, the cost will increase multiple times. So on what basis do they decide the tax? Based on value of the mineral, because this royalty by the center was decided by expert committees. Now, how arbitrarily or what formula based tax they'll apply, this becomes a huge burden. Secondly, this is a very big burden, the retrospective tax which they have to now pay from 2005 onwards. This comes out to the tune of 2 lakh crore rupees, significantly impacting the ease of doing business in India. Retrospective taxation in any case is a bad practice. Supreme Court now has given this in the favor of the state government. They can collect it retrospectively. The only relaxation which they have given is from 2005 till 2024, whatever interest payments they had to collect, or whatever fines or penalty were, these they don't have to pay. So the tax amount has to be paid. The interest or the fines penalties they don't have to pay that. And this money which is left also, they can pay it from 2026 for a period of 12 years in installments. This is some relaxation given, but still a huge burden of retrospective tax. But significant power to the state governments to increase their tax limit, the tax revenue. This is with respect to the mining judgment and the center-state federal relations. But this will only work in the benefit for the states which have those mines and minerals, not to all states. Because this was challenged, 99 judgment was challenged in 2005 again. Because 99 judgment says that royalty is a tax. Royalty is not a tax. They made an error there. 2005 it was challenged again. 2005 judgment was now concluded in 24. So they said retrospectively, 2005 say whatever the amount has been given. Is this clear? Any doubts you have with respect to center-state fiscal relations, with respect to issues or even the mining judgment? Is it clear? We'll take a break of 5 minutes, then discuss the other two topics.